When we think through ideals such as craft, material culture, and cultural flow, we are also analyzing and indulging in many complex factors that come with such significant topics on a daily basis. Let's consider an individual who encompasses a community, lifestyle, identity, materials, etc. We can infer that such an individual also pertains to a social and economic dynamic in which the cultural flow, the identity I would call it, is being threatened by gentrification. Gentrification is an irreversible process of cultural disruption on people's communities, lifestyles, and identities, such as the one shown above. Gentrification creates its own lasting cultural narrative upon an area in a crucial way, as this project will analyze and investigate the effects of funding of certain school districts, such as economic, along with the lasting effects gentrification has on the sociological aspects of school as well, such as those that are segregated. As our project will address gentrification's impacts on schools, it is also prevalent these days to note that almost anywhere one goes, they are likely to see some sort of effects of this process, let it be alone their own community. For example, on the edge of East Lansing's gentrification is displayed through this neighborhood and its community shown above. Implementation of gentrification here changed the cultural flow by shifting the community and neighborhood to allow for more educational attainment than that of their counterparts in, say, less income areas. The increased cost of living improves the overall craft of the individuals a part of the area, as the standard lifestyle will improve as economic and sociological funding are implemented throughout the school district. You can see how gentrification creates change in the utilization of power and resources in a beneficial way within East Lansing's communities portrayed above, along with this newly developed craft present in people's lives as an effect from this process allows for change in their material culture involved as well. These factors will further be portrayed in a first-handed interview.
Okay, so we are here with Christian Sarafa, a junior here at Michigan State. He's in the James Madison, and I'm here to ask Christian a few questions about his high school experience and the school in general. So, Christian, I guess we should start off with, where did you go to high school?
I went to Detroit Country Day School.
Okay, and where is that located?
It's located in Beverly Hills, Michigan.
Okay, so I guess the first question I want to ask is what was the demographics of your school?
It was honestly mainly, like, a majority of the people that were there were white, and we had a lot of Indian people there too.
Okay, and did you ever feel like your school didn't provide you with the necessary supplies that you needed to succeed?
Honestly, on the contrary, I felt like the school provided me with ample supplies to succeed. I would argue more than like the average school would.
And did you feel like your teachers had all the necessary supplies that they needed to teach?
Yeah, I definitely did. We had ample supplies. In fact, I felt like we had extra supplies.
Another question I have is, were you ever nervous for your safety while you were in school?
Never once. I felt that the safety of the school was like very, very good. In fact, again, I believe it to be better than most schools around. It was intense, actually.
And I just have one more question for you, Christian. Do you feel like you were able to learn from a multitude of different cultures while you were at Country Day?
For as far as classes go, I felt I was able to, but I really wasn't able to learn about cultures like that in like a hands-on experience. There wasn't very much diversity to learn from.
Okay, Christian, we really appreciate your time.
Gentrification has huge impacts and implications on the cities and communities in which it is implemented, especially in the schools of these communities. One of the aspects that has hit the hardest because of gentrification is the funding of these schools. Gentrification has been affecting schools across the nation for decades, but in the last 2 decades, some cities have seen the worst of it. According to an article published in 2008 by Carrie Liderson, the Chicago Board of Education has closed or plans to shut down up to 70 schools. The failing schools targeted for closing are almost all in poor communities of color. The University of Illinois states that the closings are heavily concentrated in gentrifying areas. Just to put into perspective how serious this can really be, in Bronzeville, which is also called the Mid-South area on Chicago's south side, 20 of its 22 schools were slated to be closed in 2004. This didn't go as planned because upon hearing the news, there was a massive community protest after it was leaked to the public. Nonetheless, at least 12 Mid-South schools have been closed by the end of 2007. Unfortunately, the narrative in Chicago is sadly what is going on around all the big cities across our nation.
Now that we have interviewed and talked about and explained a little bit more about someone from a fortunate school district, we will now interview someone whose school experience was a little different. Our interviewee is a student support advisor at Henry Ford High School in Detroit and will be shown now.
Okay, so do you ever feel like your school district provides students with all the supplies that they need to succeed?
So from that perspective, are we providing them with everything that they need to succeed and be, fantastic in school? No, definitely not. But I also, I don't think that that's necessarily the fault of the school, right? That's the fault of the society that we've created and the conditions that exacerbate that level of poverty.
Does the school district provide resources for teachers to help out the kids in their education?
Yeah. And I think overall they definitely do. There's a lot of trainings, there's a lot of, resources. There's a lot of, charitable organizations that are invested in the community and invested in Detroit. But like I said, the need is just so huge when you look at our student population, right? And it's kind of hard to supply that level of need with the level of funding that we get from the district. But I think that, our district does a really good job of doing their best to prepare teachers, especially with the pandemic and everything going on.
And then have you ever been nervous for your own safety or the safety of your students while you were at school?
No, not really. And I think that's a pretty common misconception that, people have when you go to a school in Detroit or whatever it may be. Ultimately, at the end of the day, our students want to learn just like any other student anywhere else in the country, right? So, I've never personally felt in danger or anything like that at school. So,
And then what are the demographics of your school, and do you feel like you're able to learn from a multitude of cultures, or is it just like one main culture that takes up the school?
so it's probably 98% African American. We have some white students as well as some Middle Eastern students as well. I mean, obviously it is somewhat of a monoculture, but you can't really even define it that way just because, you can't group, all of African American culture in one way.
Gentrification also has huge impacts on segregation in schools of the affected areas. It's no secret that gentrification has been causing massive demographic changes in cities, showing that predominantly white families have been moving into neighborhoods historically known as minority neighborhoods. The basis of gentrification is to increase the value of properties in areas that have been disinvested in for a prolonged amount of time, in turn raising rents, home, and property values. This causes the residents of the affected areas, often people of color or of Hispanic descent, to have to find somewhere else to live. Because of this, the demographics in the schools of the affected areas have been completely destroyed.
The interviews helped us to overall view gentrification through the lens of sociology and to allow us to understand why gentrification mainly affects a select group of people. The three main questions that were asked were made to help us examine the topic through multiple lenses and while helping to expand our knowledge on gentrification along with the statistics and facts stated.